Call this meeting to order on August 22nd, 2017. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Present.
Commissioner Holland, Commissioner Rhodes,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Harless.
Here. And really quick, if anyone's here to make any public comment, make sure you fill out that public comment form and put it in that box over there so that we can call you up at the end if you're here for that, okay? And Commissioner Wilson, would you like to do the invocation?
Well, I will.
Excellent.
Let us pray. Thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Give us a spirit of service. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and to treat all persons with the reverence. We seek a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, and the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. If you'll stay standing for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. City Manager, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There are none.
All right, we have a presentation by Greg Carlton and Peel and Holland, and also our Human Resources Director, Martin Russell.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioner, City Manager. Greg Carlton is here tonight to give us an update on our health insurance premiums for the upcoming 2018 plan year. And I think you're going to like the numbers that he's going to be presenting tonight. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Greg and his team with Peel and Holland. I didn't know this until today, that he's been with us since 1998, helping advise the city as far as their health benefit administration. So give a good shout out to Greg because he's really done a great job in helping the city keep its rates to where they are for this upcoming year. Greg?
Great, thank you.
Good evening. I have DJ Story, my account executive, with me, so he's going to help us tonight. And this for you. Yeah.
There's a commission meeting tonight.
It's a commission meeting. It's reminding us. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So as Mr. Russell said, we're going to talk a little bit, a few slides tonight to bring everyone up to speed on how the year's going so far, put that in perspective of prior years, and then give you some glimpses into recommendations for the next year. And if you have questions, just let me know. So again, our agenda is we'll look at the history of the plan's cost since 2012, and then we'll look at the 17 current year rolling forward, the 18 budget and escrow numbers, historical allocations, which is a fancy term of basically saying how much money has the city given employees and how's that sort of worked out, and then the recommendations for the new year. So to make this a little more graphic and see things visually, we put together a slide, same one we saw last year. We've just updated it from 16 projected to 17 projected, added in the 2016 actual numbers. So think of these stacked bars as total plan cost, and then different parties pay their different particular portions. So in 2012 on your left, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, moving to the right. The top of the bar is the red. That is the amount that the insurer has paid out for claims over $175,000. So when we have large claims, we have reinsurance that helps the city not to go broke, basically. So you can see very quickly visually in 2012, we had a really tough year with large claims. And so each year we spend about $280,000 on that insurance. So when we talk about insurance, that's really the extent of the insurance that we buy is about $280,000, $290,000. Everything else is to administer the plan or to actually pay the claims themselves. So cumulatively over that period, the carrier has spent almost $1.7 million, and we've paid, or they've spent over $2 million in claims. We've paid them about 1.7. So they're a little upside down right now, but they've agreed to hold their rates another year. Coming down there, the next bar, next chart down is the purple. And the purple is the amount of the employee contributions. And they'll vary by year depending on whether employees are in one plan or the other and whether they have employee, spouse, child, or family. So when you see those numbers vary, most of that money is because someone went from an employee to a spouse, or employee spouse to a child, or family rate, and so they're paying a little bit more in for their portion. Part of this is also how much the Joint Sewer Agency pays into the city to participate in its plan, and that's the green. So it's pretty consistent, but we also have some variation based on the same thing. How many people have family versus how many have single. And so when you take away the parts paid by other parties, what you end up with is the part that the city has actually paid net out of its own escrow account. So those blue at the bottom, that's the city's relative cost over time. You can see it varies somewhat, but the general trend is really good. In 2017, projections are much like they were back in 2013. So another really good year. I actually think we'll end this year probably another 200,000 below those projections if things go the way they have the first 8 months. Okay? So likelihood that our escrow is going to continue to go up, making it easier to hold rates for the new year. So we looked at these escrow projections, and the way we do the mathematics for this year is we basically look at what would we normally think that the city would spend on claims in a given year. At the top, you notice that's about 1.7 or 1.117 million. We've allocated in the budget for claims that happen in 2017 but don't actually get paid until 2018. And then for all the administration and the reinsurance cost. And so when you tally all that up, you can see we're just under $3 million as a budget. We've got about $2 million in the escrow today. We also hold money aside thinking, well, we traditionally have 1 or 2 or 3 large claims at $175 each, $1,000. So we're holding for 2 of those in case it happens. So the math there basically says, well, if we've got $2 million and we spend part of it on large claims, that leaves us less than we really want. So we're going to address that by making sure we capture $100,000 in the escrow. When we add up what we're putting in the escrow today from employee contributions, JSA, and the city premiums, we come out with about the need to change rates about $30,000, $20,000 to $30,000. That's just not enough to go making changes in the plan or making changes to the premium. It's basically flat. Anything less than about 50 or 75,000, I would tend to say it's good for a push. We got plenty of money in the escrow to take care of that. So in reality, our stop loss contract's calling for a 0.1% change, or about $6,800. Our projections are a little bit higher than that for the change for the budget, but again, it's not significant. So for 2018, I'm going to show you 2 views. The left is expected, the right is projected for a worst case scenario. In both situations, there's adequate funding in the escrow to take care of that. The shortfall on the left is about $31,000 if we were to hit our expected budget numbers. If we miss that number and we hit our worst case scenario, everything goes bad, we're going to be out about $623,000 more than we are today. But again, I remind you, we've got $2 million in the escrow, so there's enough to pay for that and then deal with it next year, start to look forward. So our recommendation is going to be, given that we're trying to hold to about this plus or minus $30,000 increase or decrease, just hold the rates and factors. So we'll run with the expected numbers. When we look at our allocations, one of the things you're going to notice here since 2009 is a really stable allocation. So year on the left, city allocation is how much money it gives the city employee to spend towards the program. So it's gone up a few times over the years due to CPI. We're up to about 87.24. We're showing this view as if the city employee goes and says, I want to do the wellness program, I want to get my risk assessment, get my blood draw, do all the activities. They can earn an extra, actually $2,250 for the program, plus $250 for being non-tobacco. For this chart, we're just showing the $2,000. If I add those 2 numbers together, the left number, the allocation, plus the wellness credit, then I subtract out the investor premium, so one of the plan premiums, the lowest, we end up with $1,352 left over. So not only did you get your health plan paid for, but you had $1,352 left over to go into your health savings account. And in these days, honestly, that's pretty unheard of. And so the ways employees end up owing some money or paying for premium is if they just choose not to be in the wellness program or they don't complete some of the activities, and that's a voluntary choice they make. So, but another good point here, I think, is if you look back at the net effect of this, employees' net available money in 2014 was $1,252. It went up to $1,352. It was $1,352 again in 16, $1,352 in 17. And again, we're going to recommend a rate hold on the allocation, a rate hold on the wellness credit, a rate hold on the premiums. So again, it's $1,352 again for the net. So there are very few city governments, much less any corporate accounts in this region or even this part of the country that can say they've had nearly 5 years or more of rate stabilization like this. This, I think, will be the 6th or 7th year that there's not been any significant change in rates or plans.
What is attributed? What do you attribute that to?
I think it's a combination of things. We've got some younger people coming in when folks retire, and so they're healthier, they're younger. I think the wellness program since 1999 has been amazing at changing the culture of how we think about things. There are new transparency tools now available, plus members get sort of reminded that there are great places to go get services locally that cost less than other places, and the quality's high, so they're reminded to do that proactively. The disease management plan we put in 4 years ago really has started to help with people that have diabetes, certain kinds of heart disease, cholesterol problems, and diabetes, or in high blood pressure. So I think those are all things that we're sort of dynamically working together in concert to help stabilize the rates. You know, a warning would be, stuff's going to happen. We're going to have some cancer. We're going to have, issues with spine or connective tissues over time. So those things are just naturally going to occur. So we have seen a lot of really nice stable rates and low cost. It's very likely in the near future, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, we may hit some bumps in the road. So I always say celebrate the victories when you can, because we may be up against a rough year once in a while. Usually once out over 10 years, you'll have a rough year in plans like this. But it's not something we can't get over by working together, and that's probably the biggest thing is the cooperation I see. The desire of employees and families to come together and be open-minded and learn about their health and want to do something about it.
Great, thank you.
So again, the other programs, again, good news. We have rate holds on dental, vision, no changes on the or the health reimbursement arrangement, no changes in the wellness or credits, the disease management, and that we are reviewing some carrier options with voluntary benefits, but that should, if anything, just offer rate relief and better plans. Again, wellness communication for new commissioners. Last year, with the help of the management team, we went in and revamped, so to make a very simple message on how to get what we call a path to wellness. And it really talks about the major things that an employee or family member should be doing to know about their health and to actually take action on it. So getting a physical, getting your risk assessment, signing off on your non-tobacco nicotine affidavits, getting your biometrics, and then getting involved with one of the coaches and doing the activities in the wellness program. So just a visual to show you what they get. So our recommendation, again, hold the existing rates and allocations. We meet every month with management about the claims and escrow funding. Renew your insurer and service agreements. Continue with the care management. We're going to make a recommendation next year. We really start talking about well-being as opposed to wellness. So well-being also then begins to incorporate things like spiritual and occupational and mental well-being, not just physicality, wellness. We've already started down the path of improving benefit administration through a new online system called Plan Source, so that's an ongoing program we're working with the HR lead group on in finance. And then again, reviewing the voluntary plans just to make sure they're up to speed and they've got the right benefits and rates. So that's it, and Madam Clerk, you said less than 10 minutes. So.
That was great. I have one more question.
Are there
if
any
anyone else has
questions?
any questions. So how do we build the escrow? How do we?
Basically, we, years ago, and this goes back lots of years, we sat down and said, let's set up a series where we give everyone an allocation of money to spend, and then we'll set up rates that we charge for each one of the plans, basically almost like a premium in and a premium out. We'll also put money in there for other things, like from JSA or from other sources that may be affiliated with the city's plan. So we'll take out claims, we'll take out the administration and the stop loss, and when those bills are all paid, anything left over, we'll roll it over to the next year.
Got it.
If there's not enough, because we went through 1 year where we had literally, I say we, the city's plan, had to come to this meeting and say, we had a really bad year. Back in 2012, we nearly ran out of escrow, and we had to ask finance, can we borrow $500,000 and get back on our feet? And they said yes. So the city general fund said, here's $500,000. We paid it back in the next few years, and then we started to rebuild the escrow again. So it's really like any other kind of an escrow you might see. We're just funding it at what we believe the cost would be, luckily, or by a direct means of getting everyone enthused about these different programs, they've been able to keep their costs below what we expected the cost to be, which then creates a rising escrow.
Excellent. Prepares us. We know John Perkins likes to keep us ready for emergency, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
My next question is about spending on top of our premiums for all the wellness. Does it get included in that number, or are we?
It's not in this
Okay,
number.
okay.
It's in John's budgets other places.
Right,
So,
I remember
yes.
seeing it. I just wanted to
Yeah, it is not
be
in
clear that
there.
it was different.
Because, one of the reasons is because, we still are escrowing towards a particular number, and then he separates out the who gets paid what. One of the
Okay.
things is, we're using numbers in the escrow as if everyone gets wellness. The
Got it.
reality is not everyone gets every dollar because they choose not to participate.
Excellent,
But
thank
we're
you.
making an assumption everyone would want to.
Okay, makes sense. Any other questions, comments?
So it's all good news.
Thank you very much. It is good
And
news.
it's 2 months early.
Excellent. Wow. Well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, you too. Okay, so moving on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. And so I have asked the city clerk to take off 2 of the items just so that I can know more information about the purchase of the solid waste rollouts and the purchase of the solid waste dumpsters. Primarily because there was an eclipse this weekend and I also got swarmed by yellow jackets. So I didn't get to read very much before tonight. So sorry, Rick, I'm putting you on the spot, but I hope you're good with it. And we'll put it at the end after we do the consent agenda. Anything else anyone wants to remove from the consent? Okay, with that, the city clerk will read the items recommended for approval.
Okay. Minutes for the August 8th, 2017 City Commission meeting. Appointment of Sam Bussey to the Paducah-McCracken County Human Rights Commission to replace Brittany Beck, whose term has expired. This term shall expire August 22nd, 2020. Appointment of Carol Galt and Edwin Jones to the Code Enforcement Board to replace Oscar Gamble and Mickey Carmen, respectively, whose terms have expired. These terms shall expire August 22nd, 2020. Appointment of Jim Smolin and Jennifer Frazier to the Paducah Main Street Board of Directors to replace Mari McGarvey and Sharon Pope, respectively, whose terms have expired. Furthermore, the appointment of Jill Poinbuff, Jeff Cantor, and Josh Linville to the Paducah Main Street Board of Directors to fill the newly created board positions. These terms shall expire August 22nd, 2021. Receive and file documents, personnel actions, and the following municipal orders. Approving the execution of an online grant application to obtain a 2017-2018 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Accountability Grant through the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $11,284 to be used by the Paducah Police Department. Authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the City of Paducah and Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. Approving and adopting the comprehensive health insurance benefit plan premiums for calendar year 2018, including premiums for optional dental care for employees of the City of Paducah, accepting the rates for stop-loss insurance coverage with Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield for the group health insurance plan for the City of Paducah for the 2018 calendar year, approving and adopting the vision insurance plan premiums for calendar year 2018, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for a strategic health risk advisor and strategic benefit placement services with Peel and Holland Financial Group for administration of the City of Paducah's health insurance, and amending Section H Park Services Department of the fiscal year 2017-2018 position and pay schedule for the employees of the City of Paducah to add an additional labor position and to create the position of maintenance technician. That's all the items.
Great. I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. And City Clerk, if you don't mind reading the motion for the rollout refuse, the purchase of the rollout refuse containers.
Okay. A municipal order authorizing the purchase of roll-out containers, lids, and additional replacement parts from Toter, Inc. for the Engineering Public Works Solid Waste Division.
Can we just second you, or do we need a motion?
No, we need a motion, someone that offered the motion and someone who seconded.
Great.
So you offered.
I make the motion, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks. Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. My question specifically is just if you'll go over the general program that we use
Okay.
to decide when we're going to purchase these things. I know it's a regular budget item, typically, I understand. Just give me a little context.
We generally replace the rollouts yearly. Okay, we'll go by quantity. We have two different colors. We have those that we mark with blue that are for our physically impaired customers. So when we put a blue one out, we don't have it pushed to the road. The driver sees that it's a blue one and knows that they are an physically impaired customer. We'll walk to the house and get those. So we'll get a supply of those. And then we'll get a general supply of those that are used by all of our residential customers to pick up, that gets picked up by our trucks. And we have two styles of trucks. We have the rear packers and we have the side arm, the one-arm bandits.
You don't fully replace, though.
No.
Is that true?
No,
Okay.
no, because we have like 9,000 customers.
Yeah.
And we would not buy 9,000 rollouts. We buy a supply to replace the aging ones as they, I guess, become destroyed, wore out, or whatever. Then we take new rollouts out to the customers.
And so how do you determine that? Like, do the drivers pay attention when they're out there and they mark them? How does that work?
Actually, we do it by our supervisors. Our supervisors go out, and then also customers will call, and they'll call in and say, hey, I'm missing a lid, or my wheels are broken, or it's cracked, or whatever. Then we produce a work order, and we go out and replace
Okay,
them.
great. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
If we run out and the customer calls and says, look, my lid's busted, is there a method when you don't have any, when you're kind of between
Well,
orders?
actually, we were kind of doing a couple of things that kind of got us in this quandary. One, budget cycle. Two, we were rolling over our software for purchasing and whatnot. So we got behind in our purchasing. So we're actually, some of the ones that went out were actually some of the better used ones to go out and replace some of the used ones that were in worse condition than the ones we had until we could make this new order.
Got it.
But now we're on the new purchasing system, and we're buying them in the fiscal year on the new purchasing system.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay, one more. And if you don't mind, City Clerk, to read the motion for the purchase of solid waste dumpsters.
Okay, I need to call the roll on the
Oh,
roll-up
sorry about that.
That's all right.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. Okay, now if you don't mind.
Municipal order authorizing the purchase of dumpsters, lids, and replacement parts for fiscal year 2017 through 2018 for utilization by commercial businesses within the city of Paducah.
So moved.
Second.
Hi, same thing, sorry.
Oh, same thing.
If you don't mind going over the program
Okay,
process.
we have four different size containers. We have 2, 4, 6, and 8-yard containers. And we place those based on use as far as volumes, how many times a week. We can go as few as one time a week to as many as 6 times a week for our commercial customers. But again, this is as the dumpsters become wore out, tattered, the bottoms rust out of them. When you go to pick them up, sometimes the bottom falls out of them. So we have to replace those dumpsters, not all the dumpsters. We have about 900 customers. We do not replace all the dumpsters in a year. They'll last anywhere from 8 to 10 years. So, and they run anywhere from $750 to $900 a dumpster.
Okay. And that's why this says up to 100,000, because you're probably not
Right.
going all
We're
the way
just
up.
buying inventory for replacement, and as old dumpsters are wore out, we see that they need to be replaced. The driver might say, hey, this dumpster's not long for the bottom to fall out of it. We need to replace that before that occurs. And there's no charge to the customers for that. This is just normal wear and tear. We're replacing normal wear and tear parts that are in the field.
Okay, great. Absolutely. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate you. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. Okay, I think Commissioner Wilson has the next
No.
Oh, no, Commissioner
Abraham does.
Abraham, do you have the motion for the ordinance introduction?
I do. I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Chapter 70, Parks and Recreation of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Paducah, Kentucky. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance amends Section 70-32, Public Parks, Playground, and Recreational Area available to the public to rename the health park to the Pat and Jim Brockenborough Rotary Health Park.
Second.
Excellent. I'm sorry, I thought we were doing the introductions. Thank you, guys, for keeping me on track. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Hartless?
Aye. Okay, now, Commissioner Wilson.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Section 126-71 off-street parking and loading areas of Chapter 126 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Paducah, Kentucky. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance is amending Section 126-71 off-street parking and loading areas of Chapter 126 zoning of the Code of Ordinances to amend parking requirements for several uses, remove the paving requirement for storage units, add beauty and barber shop parking requirements, add hotels, motels, and daycares to the list of uses that require 10 by 18 parking spaces, and add provisions for compact cars parking spaces.
Second?
Good
Hi,
evening,
Josh.
Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. A little bit of history behind this. This started with the development where the Odell Chico site used to be. Five Guys, Qdoba's coming in. That developer had originally asked the Planning Commission for a waiver of parking spaces. It was denied the first time because they wanted employees to park at the mall and walk across the street, across James Sanders Boulevard. Ultimately, they went back, reconfigured, and got their parking waiver. However, it started this conversation, how much parking do we really need? Are we over, under? During that research, our parking requirements haven't been updated in about 25 years. So I went back, looked at some of the other parking requirements from cities across Kentucky, Bowling Green, Owensboro, cities like that, smaller cities, and regional cities of Marion, Carbondale, Jonesboro, and Cape Girardeau, Missouri. What we found was that offices, places of worship, sit-down restaurants, and fast food restaurants were all greatly over the average. So the numbers before you tonight is more of an average between all those cities for the city of Paducah. Something new that we're looking at is for mini storage units. Right now, they're required to be paved around those things. However, they're not typically a large traffic generator. If that was reduced to gravel, per se, that would reduce that stormwater coefficient. I know that's been a big buzzword here in Paducah lately, so that's something we can do within planning to help stormwater runoff. Adding beauty and barber shops to the list of uses, right now we don't have anything for that. What we're proposing is 3 parking spaces for 1 chair, which would be the employee, somebody waiting, and somebody actually in the chair. And that's about an average across the United States as well. Hotels, motels, and daycares, right now we don't have those in the required spaces. Of course, you're dealing with luggage, you're dealing with children, so those do need to be a little bit wider in Planning Commission's opinion. And the last thing, and this is new for the city of Paducah, is compact car parking spaces. There's only one other city in Kentucky, Ashland, that has a codified ordinance for compact car spaces. So I modeled ours after Ashland, which is up to 1/3 of parking spaces for 10 or more can be designated compact car, which they can be shortened by 2 feet to 16 feet and widened by 1 foot to 8 foot. They do have to be signed, compact spaces only, and grouped together in one spot to keep them from being spread out all over the site. I would be glad to answer any questions that you all may have.
Go ahead.
I do. Okay, so for example, a beauty shop downtown, they're going to have to, how's that going to work?
In the B2T zone, there's no parking requirements, but for a new beauty shop going in the M1 zone, this is for a new build.
So everything now is grandfathered in?
Yes, we do have a new beauty shop looking to build brand new on the corner of Tennessee and Third. So that's what kicked this text amendment off.
So do they have to include land, or can they use city parking lots?
That's their specific off-street parking that's required. They can't use city because that's considered public. If they locate downtown in the B2T zone or the B2 zone, yes, they can use public parking spots then, since we don't require parking for those uses in those zones.
So if you were going into a downtown building, the parking issue would be waived completely
Yes.
because you'd be going into that zone that says you
Right.
don't have to have any parking
So
requirements.
from downtown
But the Tennessee
where?
and Third Street isn't in that zone?
It's in an M1 zone.
Okay, so it's not in the waived, okay.
So where is that zone? Where does that start that would,
Sure. The B2T zone is roughly 2nd Street to 7th, and it's right along Broadway. The B2 zone, downtown business zone, is the best I can describe as like in a donut around that for about 4 or 5 streets out.
So up to 13th-ish,
Yeah, not even that far.
not even that far, 12th maybe, okay. And then you said one seat, or one parking space per chair? Is that what you said?
It's 3 per chair.
3 per chair?
Yes.
What's the logic behind that?
3 parking places per chair?
Yes, and that's pretty average across the United States.
Whoa.
1 person in the chair, 1 for the employee, and 1 person waiting.
It just seems stringent to me.
It does. That
I
one
don't
seems
wanna
a little
do
bit
anything that
overboard
makes
to me.
us more stringent.
Yeah.
Right. As of right now, we don't have anything for beauty shop or barber shops at all.
Have we ever had any complaints where we would
Not-
need to put this in?
No, not that I'm aware of. It's just a type of use that we've never had before that needs to be in our zoning ordinance to start from somewhere.
For example, a little plaza that's, doesn't have any street parking around it, I can understand fully why that requirement would need to be there, because that's not uncommon to have more than that. Actually, if you have more than 1 person in line, then you're exceeding 3.
In a shopping plaza with other,
Yeah,
Other
that's one
businesses.
instance I can think
Right.
of, yeah.
That
where
makes sense to
there's
me
no
in
other
that
parking
situation.
off-street,
In a
yeah.
plaza, it does. On downtown, it does not.
on a single property.
Right. Yeah, this is just for standalone
Yeah.
beauty shops at this time.
The 10 by 18 parking space, what is it now?
We have 2 different requirements right now. We have 9 by 18s for personal service, employees, banks. We have 10 by 18s for retail, takeout restaurants, things like that. What this text amendment is proposing to do is to add hotels, motels, and daycares to that 10 by 18, to make it easier for luggage at the hotels and for children at daycares.
But it also takes away some of their ability to get more parking places in a smaller
It does,
area.
right.
Yeah.
But everything that's already built is grandfathered in, correct? So a new
Yes.
hotel would have to meet this.
Right. There's only one hotel that I can think of that has 9 by 18 that was approved prior. I believe it was the Residence Inn, I think, has 9 by 18, and everything else in the hotel park has 10 by 18.
They're already built to 10 by 18, so
Yes, most
that's
of them are.
standard for them.
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't specifically say that about the restaurants, but this changed the restaurant parking, like the area that brought it up, as you said,
Yeah.
where the El Chico. So that they now would have more lenient, I guess,
It's
parking area.
reduced.
Yes,
Right, it's
yeah.
It would be
reduced,
reduced.
the number. Yeah. I think I need to think about the beauty shop part. It sounds like maybe a couple of us do before we vote on this next time. Should we have that conversation before the next and update it, or do we need to do something official? What do you think?
I would encourage you to continue the discussion tonight if you wish, see if there's consensus for any change for next time, because that would be the vote.
Yeah. Is there any other interest between Commissioner Abraham and Rhodes about any of this?
Well, since you asked.
I didn't know I had to
Josh and
ask.
Because, and I thought I was really sort of picking at nits, but Josh and I were talking about auto service departments versus service station service department, or parking spots. And we had kind of a discussion about that that there were, that one service, anyway, I don't know if you want to go into these weeds or not, but I had a question about that, but I haven't brought it up. But now that we brought beauty parlors, we'll bring up.
Did you ask the
Service.
question?
Well, okay. The question was, it said that if you have an auto service department of 150 square feet, which is about a standard lift, a bay lift, that you have one customer parking spot. I'm going by memory here because I can't read this. And if you had a service garage, a service station, then for each service bay, which would really be the same thing as that 150 square feet, in my opinion, you had to have 3 parking spaces.
For Commissioner Rhodes.
Was it, okay, it was 4. Okay, so that seemed to be sort of an odd juxtaposition there, that you would require more of a service station than in like an automotive garage.
It sounds like 25 years ago, that probably made a lot of sense.
It probably did.
I don't know that it does now. Did you do any research comparison on that at all?
Not for those.
Not for those?
In the way that we are looking at that now, for example, Larry Stovesand has an area behind his car dealership to actually work on the vehicles he sells, whereas and the new Valvoline station has bays that stand alone that we would calculate the floor on.
Okay. So is there interest in considering a
Yeah, I mean,
update, a modernization
yeah, I don't
of
think
that?
it's, I don't think it's going to affect anybody in a negative way, but.
But while we're
it
updating
just
it,
seemed more to a unprofessional, which I am, it seemed that it made some sense.
yeah. I mean, it seems like modernizing this is, we might as well modernize this while we're modernizing it. So
Absolutely.
let's just do it in one fell swoop. So, so we have the auto service question. I'm going to put this up for consensus in just a second. The beauty shop concern.
Well, if
And-
you're gonna do beauty, might as well do barber.
Oh, sorry, beauty and barber, my bad.
So are you amending the ordinance?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay.
I'm just writing these down so I can get consensus with the group. So we have auto services / auto service stations. We have the barber beauty shop question. And then, did you say that the hotels, motels, and daycares, that you didn't see anyone else across the state other than Ashland doing that? Or was that the beauty shop,
That was
barber shop
compact.
example?
That was compact.
Oh, compact cars, okay. Have you seen anyone else across the state doing zoning for the hotels, motels, daycare?
Most of them do have some type of requirement, and it varies on size, city to city. For example, Bowling Green, everything across the board is 9 by 18.
Okay,
And in some other cities, well, depending on the use, it's 10 by 18.
okay. So you
Ours-
have seen cities doing this
Yes,
specifically for these uses?
yes.
Okay,
yes, I have.
okay,
All right, well, I have one more question.
okay.
And I'm not trying to be cheeky, but under places of worship, and we relaxed it from 1 stall to 4 seats. And I guess I was thinking about what happens to a church, a small church that happens to build a bigger building on the theory that they might get more converts. But during that time, when they're still really small, they maybe have a bigger building, but they have very few parishioners. Is it seats or is it people in those seats?
It's actual seats, because they may do really well, they may not. It really, it's their, market's not really the right word, but they have a better handle on how many people they can expect to.
Well, I guess that's
Come
when
into
you
those
make the
seats.
thing where then they can say, look, for now, you're a pretty small church, you've got big plans, but you could sort of grow your spaces with your parishioners.
Well, do you think they would probably build though?
I don't
as
know.
they
I was
expand?
just-
It's 1 per
like I
4
said,
seat. You actually
I thought about it for 30
helped
seconds.
them
Yeah.
by
yes.
giving them
Yeah.
more.
Right now, it's
people
1
per.
per 3 seats, and we're proposing 1 per 4, which is the average from across Kentucky and the regional cities.
So I know after that came up about El Chico and the parking, that we really kind of asked you to do this to make sure that we were being very business friendly.
Right.
So you feel like everything in here is business friendly, except we did not have any parking requirement for beauty and barber shops, and we're adding that.
Yes, and the reason I say that is because I went back, looked at all these other cities, and we're now the average. Instead of being the most restrictive of 4 different uses, we're now in line with everybody else.
Okay.
Great, that's a good, that's
Except
the good part of
that,
this.
yeah,
good
we are adding that one in.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Okay.
great, thank you.
Yes.
Because I know that helped a lot with the restaurants, because they were all, fast food pickup.
Right.
but-
Yeah.
and it allowed them to continue, move forward.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so here's the question. Do we have any amendments to the auto service station or the barber beauty shop requirements tonight?
Well, to me, it's, if they're moving, putting a beauty or barber shop in downtown, I mean, because we already have some, and I know they don't have any parking. People just park wherever and find their way to get there. I'm really not inclined to put a requirement in.
That's pretty much what you do outside of downtown. You find a spot and you go to where you want to go.
So I guess if they're exempt in the downtown business area, which is like 13th Street to
12th.
the river, but just on Broadway?
And the
And
U.
the B2 zone, which encompasses some parts of Kentucky, some parts of Jefferson as well. But this is for standalone only, out by the mall.
Okay,
south
it's
side.
standalone only. It's not, well,
Yes,
What if they bought a house and they turned a house into a barber shop?
they would still have to comply with.
They'd have to comply. Okay. Mr. Abraham, what are you thinking?
Everything that's currently downtown would be grandfathered in, correct?
And exempt, anything new downtown is exempt.
Right,
Waived
so-
completely.
but there isn't. I'm sorry, you're talking.
Well, I'm just thinking, so this is like moving forward, and the reason we would put this in would be to,
For any
Update.
new beauty shop, barber shop that we have. For example, if one standalone
yeah.
at the mall,
And so what I'm hearing is, do we want to put those restrictions on any new business coming downtown?
No, you're not hearing that.
We don't,
No, that's not what we're saying.
right?
Anything outside of downtown that's new build
Right.
or in a house renovated has to have these parking requirements now.
Okay.
Like Third and Tennessee is the good example. I don't want to keep saying that because I don't want to give away whoever it is, but Third and Tennessee, that person who's going in to start a beauty shop has to have these requirements now.
Is there
Whereas
anything really
like,
different between a beauty barber shop and other service businesses? I mean, it's the same principle, is it
a
not?
lot of cities lump them together to beauty shop, barber shop, and that's what I did for ours as well.
so again, we're just kind of catching up in some way.
Yes,
Unfortunately, this
that's
is an
correct.
addition. I've been, thinking about fairness and consistency lately. And so in my opinion, it does make it fair and consistent for all business types if we add this because we're catching up, honestly. I don't know. I think that's probably where I'm coming around to now that I'm thinking about it.
So
trying
say,
to be
I'm just
fair
gonna
and
ask one more
consistent.
question. Say one of these shops rents a front room in a house that's just uses street parking. What do they do?
Most of the time, they will have to come into compliance. For example, we did have a retail shop, the itty bitty nitty
Yes.
shop on Kentucky. They did have to go in and put parking behind their building that was a house prior to that. So we have seen conversions happen over time that has brought their parking into compliance.
And also the reason why the B2 and the downtown district is waived on this is because of the density. Is that
Yes.
true?
And-
It's a
and the
density thing.
The historic fabric of downtown.
And the historic
it's
piece of
always
that.
been.
Okay.
Yes.
So there could be a situation in the future where we see other parts of our city that either need that kind of historic designation, or we find that the density is growing so much that we can look back and say, these other zoned areas are becoming more dense and we can relax that requirement in the future if we start to see that happening in our city,
Right.
right?
And that's something that obviously we're going to be revisiting more than 25 years.
Right.
Again, so
Yeah.
we're.
Our new planning director's sitting in the audience and she's shaking her head yes, I think.
Yes.
Great, excellent. So, I mean, really, I think that gives me a little bit more relaxed about this because if we're updating and kind of modernizing and being fair and consistent, we still have mechanisms that allow us to relax those things in the future if there becomes a time when different areas of our city are ready to do that.
Right.
So, again, let's ask this. So, Sandra, or Commissioner Wilson, sorry, where are you on this right now?
I kind of lean toward pulling those out, but this is an introduction. So we don't vote on it tonight.
Right.
So we could still pull it, that part at the next meeting.
We would have to amend it
Okay.
and vote on the amendment. And
There are a
then-
couple of businesses that I think could be impacted that we need to consider.
Okay, great. That's a good way to do this.
I would say that why would you make a service station have 4 parking spaces per bay when you have an auto dealership that has 1 parking space per bay? That just seems, it doesn't seem logical to me, but. I'm
Well,
not-
you are the expert in the room on this
Oh,
issue,
I
so
guess.
you
Yeah.
get to
So I
stand
would-
up loud and proud about this
Okay,
one.
well, that'd be my one.
Is anyone opposed to making that amendment to reduce the, I'm trying to get the terminology correct, the service filling, no.
It's under service station, so if you went, I would say 1 per work bay or work area, just as you would do under auto sales repair facilities.
That's
It's
the question.
basically the same.
Okay, so 1-to-1 is the
I make-
proposal.
I'd
Jeff
make
has a
both
question.
1-to-1.
Josh, this off-street requirement, I assume that also applies for cars being parked there while they're waiting to be picked up?
Yes.
So when you
it
think about a
covers-
1-to-1 on a service bay, think about the cars that are waiting to get in as well,
Yeah,
that have been dropped
It covers
off.
that as well. And for the service bay, for a gasoline, or a oil change place, same principle, people lining up, waiting to go in, have their oil change, that sort of
It's not unusual in a repair situation, though, bring it at 8 o'clock and we'll have it done by the end of the day. So how many
Yeah.
cars actually come during that period of time? Can be quite a
Actually,
few.
Get that out.
Josh, you could sort of say car wash and quick service lubrication are sort of a very similar kind of business. They stack them up, run them through, and they're gone. I mean, they're not there hung up for 2 or 3 days waiting on parts and this, that, and the other. Just a thought.
Okay.
So do you want to explore that then, between now and when we do it? Why don't you explore that with Josh and see if you decide it's the right thing to do, and we'll do the same thing and amend it. Okay. Whew. Possibly, that's right, if we have a
Possibly.
vote, that's right. Thank you for the possibly. Okay, wow, that was really entertaining. Did you guys enjoy that in the audience? All right.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you all.
so much, Josh, really, thank you. All right, Commissioner Rhodes, you have a motion.
Yes, I do. All right, now we're into the big stuff here, spending money. All right, I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute change order number 1 for the Noble Park Lake Bank Stabilization Project, Phase 2. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The City of Paducah hereby authorizes the mayor to execute a change order number 1 for the Noble Park Lake Bank Stabilization Project, Phase 2, in the amount of $20,500 to pay for tree removal of organic materials from the pond, construction of a new pedestrian bridge connecting the land between the shelters and playground on the east side of the park, and to extend the contract until September 30th, 2017. Therefore, this change order will increase the original contract amount to $263,480.
Second.
Mayor, Commission, City Manager, this is something that we didn't expect. For example, when we were putting the, we're referred to it as seawall, we had 2 trees that were together, very tight together, and it was believed that when we drove the piling through, that there was one tree that was so close to the edge that as we drove the piling through, it was cutting a lot of roots, and that tree more likely would have died. But if we waited later, removal of that tree was going to be a whole lot more expensive if it died afterwards than as we are right now. So we had them remove the tree, and then also a phenomenon that I took our city manager out there, and something I don't understand, but it does happen. When we drained the lake, we noticed a great number of leaf and organic material deposit on the, I would say, Park Avenue end of the lake. I don't know whether it's the northwest winds or the leaves. As the leaves go in the lake, they blow, and they were just piled up there. So while we had the opportunity, we had the leaves removed. And that was an additional $5,000, I believe, for that. And Commissioner Wilson, you brought up some time ago that we had an old bridge that had netting around it out near the back area where the big playground is, and you had questions about that, and we had intended on getting that set against that little draw, that little low area, so kids could go from the playground area to the bathroom, and there's like 4 or 5 pavilions over there, and it also provide for a bridge to go from the pavilion to the playground area. This is a bridge that was left over from an adjustment we made some time ago. We hadn't set the bridge, but as we would like to be consistent with those bridges, YEC, or Youngblood Excavating Company, did an excellent job with setting the bridge that we had set for this one. And they did such a fine job, we asked them what they would charge to set the abutment so we could set this other bridge up on that and we could connect the walks later. And they said, we can do that for about $13,500. I brought that to our city manager's attention, and it's before you tonight, and we recommend it because it'll get an eyesore out of the park and address that problem.
It's so much more fun for the kids to walk across that log.
Well, I noticed them
Dirt.
walk, I noticed
No,
them,
thank you.
I
I'm always
noticed them
concerned.
walking across the water line, and I'm like, why am I building a bridge when they have more fun doing Olga Corbett?
We need the bridge.
But there's more than kids across there,
Sure.
and that's
Yeah.
a several
Yeah.
hundred-foot
Yeah, thank
stretch
you.
there, so this makes sense. Okay.
It does. So, just continuing on Noble Park. So it is under construction, obviously, and it looks that way right now because geese are everywhere. The weeds. So on like Duck Island, all that brush that's up there now, will that be cut down? Can I ask that question now since we're talking about Noble Park?
I'll let Mark handle that. Hope he's handling it.
You know, I mean, the house you can barely see, they're so grown up on there.
Right. We know, we are actually prepared to start filling the lake either at the end of this week or the first of next week, since they just finished painting. My people this week are getting in with their hip waders and their muck boots, and they're gonna be crossing in and cutting all Duck Island and all of that grass and all the high grass and pulling it out and hauling it away. We're not gonna leave it in the lake or anything like that. So we're gonna haul that out that starts this week.
Okay.
And then we're also gonna fill it next week. We're putting in a new fountain because the other one burned out. And we are then, Fish and Wildlife is going to restock 1,100 catfish in there next week, at the end of next week.
So, okay, so all that's coming.
All
So
that's
it will be cleaned up and
Yes.
pond will be back up, Duck Island will be cut. These are things that people have been asking me about. And it'll, of course,
we have to-
rain will wash some of the other
Again-
problems from the geese away.
As you
Hope and-
said, we were in a construction site.
Right.
Construction zone. We had no right to get in there for that
Yeah,
time.
and I think people forgot that, some of the messages that I've gotten, and I've said it is under construction. That's why it looks the way it does right now. It will be back to its beauty and its glory soon. So you're talking much sooner even than
Within
we
the
expected.
next 2 weeks.
Thank you
It's
very
gonna
much.
be
That's awesome news.
much more beautiful than it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Excited about it. It's great news.
Okay,
I'm not gonna help clean it up.
moving on. City manager, do you have a report?
Well, a couple things. I want, Tamara Tracy, our new planning director, started last week, and we've all welcomed her and will continue to. I want to give a shout out to the staff in the planning department for the past several months, how they have all come together and rode together and steered together and kept that department moving forward during that time. And it was a pleasure for me to work more closely with those folks, get to know them better, and hopefully help them with some things. The Eclipse logistics, I think everything went well. Logistically, there were no major issues, at least that have been brought to my attention, so thanks to everybody and the planning that took place, the anticipation, really the preparedness that preceded the event, and one of the best views in the country was right here in Paducah. So it was a nice thing, and it also was probably the second occasion where the riverfront area saw some major attendance, RVs and such parked in former executive in site. So it gives us a little more idea, I think, of the potential for that open space down there and how that can come into play for different things. We are working to prepare a presentation on a curbside recycling program. I want to just visit briefly about that tonight and point out 3 or 4 things that are really important components of that as we endeavor to put a system in place that really draws on existing resources rather than requires additional resources. Hopefully would favorably impact the expense of that program. And we are tying that in very closely with our yard waste collection program that for some time the city has been offering once a week, which is extremely unusual around the country for a city to offer that frequently. So therein lies probably the greatest opportunity to draw on some resources by actually reducing the frequency of the yard waste collection program that we're looking at from the present once a week to once every other week. And in my observation, and I think in the experience of the Solid Waste Division, most of the material, the size of the material that we see can be managed such mainly at the household level so that a once every week pickup is workable. It'll take some participation by the homeowners in some cases. Probably the biggest adjustment would be with grass that's cut and bagged. But as far as limbs and those kind of things that fall to the ground, in my observation, most of the piles from week to week are relatively small. And we would be asking homeowners under this concept to find some way to store those on their property rather than in the street. And put them out once every 2 weeks instead of once per week, which is what's allowed now. A couple of things about it. In order for this to be done with the most efficiency, we would like to be able to require that all recyclables be picked up curbside and not have an allowance for alley pickup there. I can't think of why that would be necessary. We would be looking at smaller containers, and we would be looking at roll-off containers, a smaller volume roll-off container, which means there would be some expense there, but along with that comes operational efficiency because we would be using a lot of the same equipment that we use now for roll-off containers. As Rick affectionately calls the trucks, the one-armed bandits could pick those up as well. The participation level, that's a little tricky. I'm assuming the commission would choose to make that optional rather than mandatory. And with that being the case, we would need to come up with some consensus, the commission would, on whether or not there would be a separate charge, or we would back some expense out of the existing solid waste charge and associate that with the with curbside collection. That works at least up to the point of those who choose to participate. Those who don't would still theoretically pay the same amount, so that's something we'd have to think about, and we haven't looked at it financially close enough to determine if it would make sense to alter the existing charge down for those who chose not to participate. But lacking mandates on the state level for keeping certain materials out of the landfill or any kind of source reduction, and given the fact that under our current contract for solid waste management that we pay more to have recyclables processed than we do garbage, it's a little bit difficult to not associate some sort of fee with this service. But again, it might be possible to carve out some portion of the existing charge that people are paying. The only problem is it raises the question, well, what about people who choose not to participate? Do they still continue to pay the same amount? So those are some of the issues going ahead that I wanted to point out for you to be thinking about, and we anticipate making a presentation here in the next 2 or 3 weeks on it.
I would be interested in exploring a test run so that these numbers can be a little less, nebulous, and we're guessing the participation, and maybe we do like a 3 to 6 month trial run where we put it out to the world, people sign up for it, let's see what the volume is, and then we can kind of readjust. I don't know if that's an option. I would like to put that out there as an option, because I think that would be an interesting way to do this instead of just spend all of our time and energy on a program that might not work.
Well, the question is it price sensitive, and if so, what's the point? I mean, do you do it with no charge and oh, hey, anybody that wants to participate, put it out, and we're not going to charge you? I think if we do that, we need to be prepared to not charge going forward, because that's what people would probably expect. That would be easy to do, to arrive at some kind of a fee for it and make that a condition for participation. Mm-hmm. That gets to be a little more difficult, because this is a volume how do I want to say it, economically, the number of stops you have, the more of those you have, the more efficient you can become. So typically, the higher number of subscribers you have, the lower cost per unit you can charge. So where do you make that call starting out? So, you know, some of those things are a little bit tricky, but I think maybe some of those are issues that we would bring forward to you all for some more discussion, or at least give you some starting points or some options to look at on some of those things.
Didn't the citizen survey, didn't it ask the questions about if there was a nominal charge?
It did, Pam. You remember what the
Citizen
fee
survey.
was that the survey asked of people? I think it was in the $3 to $5 range, wasn't it?
$3 to $5.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Just,
Per
would
month.
you be willing to spend
People would be willing
$3 to
to-
Oh,
$5?
the repay, I'm
For
sorry,
recyc-
okay.
For curbside
Sorry.
recycling.
3 to 5.
But that's of the people who answered.
Who answered
the
that.
survey.
Did you have a question, how many people were interested in curbside recycling? We don't remember the.
I thought it was
survey
if they,
now.
would they be
Yeah.
willing to pay more?
It was.
But there was also a separate question that just said, are you interested in general? Okay. Great.
But
Maybe when
it
we have
was
that discussion, we can
statistically
have that.
valid. I mean, the responses we got were statistically valid to gauge the entire public by, in terms of the price. But, you know, whether or not everybody want to participate, that, you know, we don't know that
Right,
for sure.
right. Because if you ask the question, you can answer that question in theory, but the interest is a different question, so
Yeah, and then
maybe we
the,
could
you
look
know,
at that when we do the presentation.
Other piece of the whole thing is just kind of the financial piece with respect to the solid waste fund. I can think of no reason why, and I think I've said this all along, as we've talked about this off and on for the last 2 or 3 years, that this is a program of the solid waste fund, and it should be managed within that operation, both operationally and also financially. So we do have an existing fee there that we charge, that we can take a look at overall for its ability to sustain an additional program. But again, going into this thing, the thought is try to transfer some of the expense from a program that, quite frankly, is probably overcooked. And I don't mind saying that, because that really, my observation, it is. And make that program more efficient and transfer some of the overage, if you will, in expense into the curbside collection program. And then I think we possibly can achieve a really nice balance.
What's the timeline on the presentation?
Oh, I think 2 or 3 weeks, I think we'll come back at you with some starting point to look at. Like I said, I think there are some decisions that need to be made. Logistically, we can talk then too about how long it would take to get things in place. Primarily, I think would be acquiring the roll-offs that we would need to do, which are not in our current specifications, I don't believe, Rick, by size. So I don't know that would be that terribly tough to do. And then, of course, the timing with respect to what's a good time of year or not such a good time of year to change the frequency on the yard waste pickup, if indeed that's what you choose to do.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Any other questions about that? Any discussion? No? Thank you very much. Okay, anything else from the commissioners? Anybody want to say anything?
Yeah, I have something. I had a conversation a couple of days ago with a group of African Americans concerning the temperature of our country presently, and we talked about a lot of different things. And it occurred to me that there is a distraction when it comes to African Americans about the real issues that we face within the United States. So passions were high, and I have a short statement just to keep me on point so that I don't ramble. So if you guys would give me a moment.
Sure.
For several years and counting, more black babies have been aborted in New York City than were allowed to be born. In 2016 in Chicago, 75% of murders were black, and 71% of murderers were by blacks. The age of the highest murder group was 17 years old to 25. Of the 433 souls that were murdered in Chicago, 326 were black. In our nation, data shows that 93% of all black homicide victims are killed by other blacks. Of the black children in this country that are allowed to be born, over 70% are born into single-parent homes, which is interesting because from 1940 to 1950, while racism was rampant, children were born in a higher rate to two-parent homes. We can leak our issues to the breakdown of the family. Want to fight justice? Listen, today there are millions still in slavery. In Gabon, Gambia, the Ivory Coast, Benin, Moldova, Nepal, India, Pakistan, Haiti, Mauritania, where 20% of the population is forced to be slaves. There are avenues established to help these people, and anyone can help these poor souls that are still enslaved today. As humans, we tend to gravitate toward the easy fix. Tearing down a statue that should serve as encouragement and motivation as to how far we have come as a nation will not fix one single thing that was mentioned in the paragraphs above. Fixing the woes of our country will only be accomplished by the same solution for all of its citizens: personal responsibility. We cannot legislate morality. In short, I don't choose to take part in allowing our city to be held hostage by a political flavor of the day. Paducah has always thought of herself and has trusted God to direct us. I choose to rely upon that, by God trusting through the people of this city of Paducah, who are some of the most giving, compassionate people I've ever known. Tearing down statues and changing names of things do not fix one thing. Ask President Barack Obama, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and the national chapter of the NAACP, when they all had kind words of condolences to the recent passing of Congressman Robert C. Byrd, a former Cyclops leader of the KKK, who has numerous highways, statues, and buildings in his honor. They showed people can change and be accepted, as we all should. The rest of our country can make their own decisions. As for me, I stand with the folks here in Paducah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the audience? Okay, anyone else? All right. Thank you all so much, and I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Meeting adjourned.